right course.
Let's move to the budget and your concerns. You just heard Dr. Romer, the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. She's not ready to give yet, but I know on your committee, the Budget Committee, you look at these new congressional projections and say, sorry, Mr. President, the math doesn't add up. What does the President have to give from his agenda, whether it be health care, education, the environment? What has to give to meet your bottom line?
Well, first, I think your listeners have to understand how staggering the numbers are. We're talking about a deficit in the trillion-dollar range for as far as the eye can see. We're talking about deficits which are 4 to 5% of GDP, which is not sustainable under any form of government. We're talking about a public debt. This is the debt that people own of the federal government that will be around 80% of GDP. Historically, it's been around 40% of GDP in the out years. The practical implications of this is bankruptcy for the United States. There's no other way around it. If we maintain the proposals which are in this budget, over the 10-year period that this budget covers, this country will go bankrupt. People will not buy our debt. Our dollar will become devalued. It is a very severe situation. And I find it almost unconscionable that this administration is essentially saying, well, we're just going to blithely go along on this course of action after they're getting these numbers which show that they're not sustainable. And they know they're not sustainable. The way I've described it is as if you were flying an airplane and the gas light came on, said you got 15 minutes of gas left, and the pilot said, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to fly for another 2 hours. Well, the plane crashes, and our country will crash, and we'll pass on to our kids a country that's not affordable. That's not fair to our kids. No generation should do this to another generation. That's what this comes down to. The president keeps talking about how he doesn't want to pass the problems on to the next generation. What he's guaranteeing here in his budget structure are problems which our children aren't going to be able to survive with. They're just basically not going to be able to pay the price of the cost of the government. Well, and it is primarily a spending issue. The proposal in this budget is to take federal spending up to 23% of gross national product and keep it there. Well, historically, gross national product spending in this country has been about 20% of GDP. The federal government has been taking about 20% of gross national product. When you take it up 3%, it doesn't sound like much, but it calculates into massive deficits and massive debt. The budget is proposed doubles the debt in 5 years, triples it in 10 years, and basically puts this country in an untenable position. So we've got to go back and we've got to reorganize. And what I've said and what Senator Conrad has said and what others in the Senate have been willing to say, let's go back, rethink this in a bipartisan way. Let's take a look at where the real spending is, which is in the entitlement accounts, and figure out how we get them under control and get their growth rates into something we can tolerate so that we do pass on to our kids an affordable government.